Good. So here's the story. I was yesterday in Shul, and I'm very excited about the way in which Mark is doing his stuff. It's such a pleasure to see how people have come to daven there. There are about 100 people on Shabbos morning, something that I didn't expect to happen. And if anybody were to say to me, what is, how do we know that there's such a thing as Tchiyat HaMeitim? I would say, look at that shul and you will see Tchiyat HaMeitim. It really is that way. So that, I find that very exciting. One of the things that he was talking about was that he would, next week on Thursday, have a big kettle for Kashering, just like they do in Yerushalayim. And of course, when you figure that one, and bring all your metal kelim and we'll kasher them and so on and so forth. So that made me think that it was important to learn a little bit about what goes into kashering the kelim. Is there another sheet like this around?
I put them all on this table.
On this chair, I thought someone else was crying.
Thank you. Thank you. Good. So we'll leave the others there. So it's, oh, that's fine. So the question that comes up is, what are the basic dinim of that? Because if we take a look and see what has been transmitted as custom that is observable, we get into a place that this is the way we do it. And this is the way we've always done it. And when you go, this is the way we do it, this is the way we've always done it, you cannot help it but get into a technology that is an old technology. So if I want to go and suggest a newer technology for kashering kelim, and for me, that technology has to do with the dishwasher. Because you put in detergent, and you can do a very hot cycle. And one of the wonderful things about the dishwashers has been that it takes care of a certain kind of schmutz. And what do I mean by the schmutz? A definition of what is treife, or what is chometz, you know. So,
what do you mean it takes care of treife?
Well, if I take a pot that's been used for cooking,
Right.
for, not for rendering pork fat, but for cooking
Yeah.
in there. So someone had made spare ribs and sauerkraut, treife, and I wash the pot out, and I leave it for 24 hours unused, and then and the pot was, let's say, stainless steel, and there isn't any enamel on it, and so on, and I take it and drop it into that vat that is boiling, and on top of the boiling that it does from the flame underneath, I also throw in a hot stone, then it goes, like that, and then we say that's how you kasher.
Right.
Now, I've been around when they did this with those big vats, and it was funny because I looked at the turbid water that they were doing it in, and I didn't have such a sense. The good thing is that it was hot, so that it killed off anything. But the question of what do our detergents do to microbes, and to what extent, for instance, sterilization doing something that is like hagalat kelim. Because if the doctor is going to use sterilize instruments, for operations, that sterilization in itself has that element of Haggalah. Why is it that we sterilize it? Because we don't want to take the trephis, if you will, yeah, of contamination and put it into another situation. As I talk about this, it looks like maybe I am not honoring the dinim, by talking about that. Because for years I have been dealing with what I call chemical kashering. I'm not doing it the same way now that I did before because it wasn't eco-kosher what I did. But I would fill up a bathtub with water and put inside Drano. Mm-hmm. And then leave things soak there for 3 days. And then I would use and wash it off, and then use all these kelim for Pesach, because if there was any organic stuff left that could be accessed chemically, it would do it. And in fact, it would do it a lot better than the usual way of kashering. When I first got into Rabbonis, it was in New Haven, Connecticut, and the landlady in whose house I was staying, and she was also providing food for us. It was very much like the priests with a housekeeper, yeah? Mm-hmm. So Velvel Schildkraut and I stayed in that house, and she prepared food for us, and her daughter didn't keep kosher. One day, her daughter gave her a Pyrex frying pan, and she wanted to kosher it because she had done bacon in it before. So she sets it up to kosher, just the way in which one usually would do it. And then she says, is this now going to be okay? So I asked her, wash it out carefully, then put up water and brew a cup of tea and taste it. And she tasted a cup of tea and it didn't have a good tam. Now this is very interesting because it's notain tam lifgam. It spoils it. There's notain tam lishbach. Imagine, for instance, if I were to take that frying pan and fry some eggs in it, and that little bit of pork flavor, you added something to it, that would be a notain tam lishvach. But the Chachamim said that if it lasts for more than 24 hours, the keli is not ben yoma of that same day, then we are dealing with something that's called notain tam lifgam, because we take it that whatever was there was rancid, and so a person wasn't using it anymore for the purpose of enhancing the flavor, and so we agree that this is okay after 24 hours, okay? So even for kashering kelim, they wanted to have 24 hours to pass before. And when it came to Pesach, there is some notion that one should wait for 3 days to let the tam really go from that, so that the tam chometz that may have been in there should disappear. So I gave you this as a hakdama, as an introduction for what we're going to cover. And now I'm going to do another hakdama so that we can do the second part. Mark was saying that somebody had asked him a question whether a meditation pillow that was filled with buckwheat was chometzik. And this was so wonderful. Okay. Now, first of all, buckwheat isn't chometz, and quinoa isn't chometz.
It's not, yeah.
And so, where are we with rice and with kitniot? So I wanted to deal with that too, because for us, once you become more conscious of health issues, and organic, and especially if you're a vegetarian besides. When Pesach comes, all that you've got is matzah and matzah and matzah and potatoes, and all these things that give you either constipation or make you fat, too much carbies. So how should you go about doing that? By the way, if you can get raw psyllium fibers, either hulled or unhulled, it doesn't matter, and you can mix them into your knedlach, or if you can do that with flax seed, that will prevent constipation, because it'll keep things moving rather than compacting in there. So I'm mentioning that. So the question is, again, where do we stand with those small seeds like psyllium or flax or rapeseed? We can go through a whole list of these things and ask the question, is it chometz, is it not chometz?
Theft.
Pardon?
Theft.
Kef.
No, theft.
What is that?
It's also a kind of grain.
Well, that may be chometzik, because it is a grain, and we'll have to talk about the botanical issue from which the grains come. So here is what I copied out from Otzar Dinim Uminhagim.
Hey, what is the root of Agala? I mean,
You'll see.
Gaal, but what does it mean? How do we...
He says, Hanefesh go'elet bo.
From Magi'il.
Giul, yeah.
Magi'il.
Yeah. So let's take a look.
Okay.
It's a funny word here, this Hagala word.
Yeah, it is.
But here we are. So, Hagala, Hasarat Shamnunit Shel Isur Mikelim. It is to
oily.
remove
Shem.
the grease
Yeah, grease.
from a forbidden thing from Kelim. Ha'isar hu davar she'adefesh mo'esed v'go'elet bo. And we are talking about what is an isur, and he gives you, and it can go two ways. One way is to say that which repels you is an isur, because you speak of that bukza machmas mius, you know. It is something that you don't like. But
Just
the other
simply you
one,
don't like. It's
Yeah.
just simply you don't like.
Yeah, Magi'il is something
not just
disgusting.
you don't like. We're talking about
disgusting.
something that is understood that this is ichse. No, you know, it's that kind of thing that you say feh. And then when you go to the other way to read it is that which the Torah forbids, the neshama considered it to be. Get that two ways of reading that sentence. All right. Umagil hakelim lahasir hagoel hu ha'isur hadabek bahem. And so magil is the function that we do to take away the isur that is stuck on it. Now let's go and take a look at the word. I would have thought that magil should say making it dirty,
Yeah, that's
right?
what
It's a causative of that. Well, you have to understand that some words give you an opposite. The word sacre is holy, and it's also cursed. You know, altus is high, and it is deep in Latin. In Hebrew, we have the same kind of a situation.
Ara,
Huh?
Ara,
Yeah?
which is klala,
Yeah?
and He'ara, which is enlightenment.
The enlightenment, right? You have there's a whole bunch of these things. The ara is related to a reish lamed. The curse is reish lamed chiluf. Allah is curse. You know, so sometimes you have In fact, when I was writing, I once wrote a paper. It's so wonderful. I've never paid much attention to that aspect of mine to push it forward. But I really love language. And so I did a paper on the shafel, the shin stem in Hebrew. And I gave it to a learned society. It's the only learned society paper that I have. But it's trying to show that when there is a shin, like when you say shafel, and you take a look nafal, and you see that in that pal, fallen, okay? It's interesting, shavar, bur, break, bar, parats, parar, break, burst. So these are the psycholinguistic forms in which certain syllables, onomatopoeic syllables, become rooted in language. But the point I was making is that when you look at shachrer and sha'abed, you realize that l'sha'abed means to enslave. It is evet is the word, and shin is like me'abed, okay? And shachrer is cherut, is free. So when you have shachleil today, l'shachleil, to multiply, shikum, and that's related to the word shechina, shochein, which is kon, chav, vav, nun is the basic shorish, from which you get konein, mechin, kavanah also, right? All these words, and the shin is not part of the shorish, okay? Gavoha, nisgav, sagav, okay? So that's the other thing. So, but I'm saying, here I'm trying to point out that sometimes you use it for opposites. So when you want to say cherem can be holy and can be a curse, okay? And kadesh and kadesha and all that. It's interesting how that is, how these words are there. So anyway, ומגיל הכלים להסיר הגואל הוא האיסור הדבק בהם. מקור הדין הגלה בתורה, where do we find it? שנצטוו ישראל על הכלים שלקחו במלחמתם עם המדיינים. They took all kinds of spoil when they fought the Midianites. And what the Torah says, ach, et הזהב והכסף, etc., כל דבר אשר יבוא באש תביאו באש וטהר, וכל אשר לא יבוא באש תביאו במים. ודרשו ממילת אח שצריך להעביר החלודה קודם שיגלנו. Why is that? Because it says only that, but that which is stuck to it, like you have sometimes burnt on stuff on a keli, you have to remove that. That has to be scrubbed beforehand. But once you're down to the pot itself, then you can take it into what you have to take it through. So then he says, Asher yavo ba'esh, כגון הסכינין, השפודין והאסכולות שהשתמשו בהם על האור. בבשר צלי על גבי אש צריכים ליבום באש. So if I want to take the outdoor grill, right, and kosher it, I would have to set it up, start it up, put a piece of metal on top so that everything would get really hot. Libun meant that it is no longer dark, but it's gotten to be red. It doesn't have to be white hot, but something that shows that it has already achieved that kind of heat, because by the time it gets red hot, if there's anything inside, it's burned it off. And if you've been to see it, it smells like whatever there was in there gets burned off. And that's why, for instance, if you have a stove that's a self-cleaner, it can handle that. And whatever you can put into the self-cleaning stove, like frying pans, that would handle it.
Or it would have to be a strong frying pan, wouldn't it? I mean,
Well,
But
if you
it has
have,
to be all metal, can't have a wooden handle.
that's right, if it has a wooden handle, it'll burn it off,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But if you, we have some metal handle frying pans, and then these we can put into the oven and turn it on and let it do the self-cleaning stuff, and you can you can smell it again, you know. What happens is, and you put the ventilation on, of course, because otherwise the smoke alarm would start coming. Okay. See, I'm trying to get this to be to the place. I'm not sure user friendly, but user capable. Okay, friendly is a whole other mice. Okay. I had a teacher who had a separate Pesach kitchen. A whole year it was closed off because he was so nizhar in that. The mohel, who was the mohel for my shalom, had a milchige kitchen and a fleischige kitchen that way.
Yeah.
He didn't
I
want
got it,
that there should be anything touchy. One was locked when the other one was open all the time. No. So that needs libun ba'esh. V'chol asher lo yavo ba'esh kegon kosod u'tzluchiyot shetashmishon betzonen dai la'aviron b'mayim ba'adacha u'tvila. Tvila, we are still talking about the Midianites. So if you have a keli that comes from a goy, you have to be toivel the keli, and it's so wonderful. And there's a kitchenware store in Borough Park that has a mikveh in the back, just for tvilat kelim, so that you can go and you buy something new, you dip them there.
So, but this, in this case, he's talking about the things that were taken from the Midianites that you couldn't burn to clean. You just dunked. There was nothing about hot water or anything like that. It just says
No, he's saying if they shimushon betzonen, they were used only for cold. Go take a look. How long ago was it that you had to be very careful when you put tea into a glass?
Yeah.
They didn't have tempered glass, and you put a spoon in, if you remember, you know, to be able to handle that extra thing. So the rule is, as hot as it was in its use, so hot it has to become. So the rule is kebole o kach polto. In the same manner as it swallowed it, in the same manner it gives it back. Okay? Now. Ve'im tashmishon berchamin tzarich la'avir b'mayim rotchim. If it was used in hot, you have to put it through hot boiling water. Ki hakelim poltin ha'isur kederech shebolu oto. For the vessels, they spew out the forbidden thing, they exude the forbidden thing in the same manner as they absorbed it. Now, stop for a moment here because this is important. When these laws were written, the understanding of heat as being the movement of molecules wasn't there. And it was clear that the colder a thing is, the less movement is there in the molecules, and there is no room between them. Up to the point when you get to absolute zero, when at this point there is no way in which the molecules move. Got that? So if there is movement in the molecules, the porosity of a substance gets increased by the heat, by the temperature that it has. So we have to be really aware of how much heat there was. So when they're saying kebolo o kach polto, they mean to say you bring it at least a little bit more. That's why they want to throw in that extra hot stone, you know. It's so wonderful when you, if I were to invite a Native American sweat lodge person to watch how we do that, you know, he would have nachas. He would say, I know that kind of stuff, okay? And if I could, I surely would. want to have a sweat lodge before Pesach so we can kosher ourselves.
Why not?
No, I think I'm gonna go to the Schwitz
Springs?
here and do it in the Schwitz, in the sauna. But it would be very nice if we had such a sweat lodge, and the issue of cultural appropriation gets in the way if we want to do the sweat lodge ourselves. But go back to the story of the molecules opening up. Ruth, what do you want to say?
Well, I'm just wondering if the dishwasher would do this.
Pardon?
If the dishwasher would meet those criteria.
Well, we haven't talked about chemistry yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I guess my whole, as we're talking about all of this, I'm again trying to think, what is the point of the whole in terms of transformation? What is it supposed to do for us?
You got to ask this later on.
Okay.
First, we're
Yeah.
still on the technical side.
Right, I know.
Okay.
But it's going
Once
through my
after we're done with Asiya, we're gonna go to the other thing. Okay.
head. Yes,
All right.
thank you.
There's a funny Yiddish song I'll remind you about later on. So now we are. Omnam lediver Reb Chia berei de Rav Huna lo asra Torah ele kedera bat yoma. The lo noten tam lifgamhi. When a keli is of the same day of use, then it doesn't give its taste for bad stuff, and therefore the Torah forbade it to use the same day. Aval im shimesh ba achar kach notin ha'isar shebala tam lifgam umutar. And he quotes the Gemara in Avodah Zarah. Got that? It is permitted because the vessel has given it back. Ach ledina. Now we are talking about, never mind the Gemara, but how do we paskin these things? Tzrichin hagola de gazrinen shena bas yom mishum bas yomin. Because a fence was made to say, will you remember which one was for that day and which one came was not the same day? And since we don't want to mess it up, we say people will make a mistake if you permit one. So we wait for all of the kelim to be at least 24 hours, okay? Umachmirin shelo lahagila kli shehi bat yoma. Hakone kelim yeshanim min hagoy efshal achshiram al derech tashmisham. You buy kelim from non-Jews and they have used them for Isser, you can use them if you make them kosher according to the way in which they have been used.
Again, this is hot and cold. We're referring
The hot and cold
Yeah,
thing.
goes on to say.
The issue is going to come up when we finish with this thing. We'll talk about plastic, okay? Ima tashmish haya betzonin madichan umeshafshefan heitev b'mayim umatbilan vehem mutarim. Im nishtamshu b'chamin magilan b'mayim rotchim ואחר כך מטבילן. וכן לעניין כלי חמץ, להכשירם לצורך הפסח לכל הפחות גימל ימים מקודם. Okay? And he quotes the Rachayim and the Minhagim of the Maharil. Who was the Maharil? Rabbi Yehuda Leuven, I think. Yosef, Yehuda, Yitzchak, I don't remember which one. He was a Rov in Germany at the time of the Vad Arba Aratzot. And this is an interesting historic note. He brought together the Chazanim from Poland, the Rhineland, all those that were in the Arba Aratzot, that included Lithuania, 4 countries. And he had the Chazanim listen to a Nusach and learn that Nusach, from which we have ay 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 ay. So he is the one who, the same way as the dinim were set for Ashkenazic Jews by the Ramor and Moshe Isserles, the Maharil set the Minhagim. When I was in Krakow, I spent one Shabbos, I davened in the shul of the Ramo, the old shul where Reb Moshe Isserles was Rav. That Shabbos, the Slonim Rebbe, the younger Slonim Rebbe, had come because he and his Hasidim had gone back to Slonim to fix up the graves of the ancestors and did everything that was necessary at that time. It was still under the communist Polish regime at that time. So I heard him announce to them, and especially to the Bal Tefillah, don't you dare to daven the Hasidische Nusach here. This is the shul of the Ramo, and here we have to daven Nusach Ashkenaz. Do you get the idea? I was very impressed by that he felt that this is the way to honor the tradition. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying this, the Maharil gives us the thing about the 3 days, okay? Now he's going to say, Ofan ha'hagalahu l'sum kli katan b'chli gadol u'lamaloto b'rotchin. You take a bigger vessel and you put a smaller one in, you fill it with hot water. Uchli gadol o yore she'ena yachol lachnis toch kli acher ose lepiv gatfana v'ruzer tit כדי שיתמלא היטב, המים יעברו על שפתו כמו רותחין מכלי ראשון. Imagine you have a pot, a big pot, and you want to do this pot for kosher. So you take clay and you make on top of the rim another rim, build it up a bit, so that the water can cover at least as much as where the metal is, and that'll handle it. Oh,
What is I'm sorry, this word gnafa?
pardon?
This is
Gadfana.
Gadfana.
It means like a wall, like,
wall.
yeah.
And what's the yore?
Pardon?
Kli gadol or yore?
He pours over it. They used to, some of the kashering you can't do by, let's say if I want to, imagine I have a metal counter. And I cut on this metal counter and I dealt with it in hot and so on and so forth. How am I going to kasher that? So the way in which he would have it is that you pour over hot water. Now, if that's going to get on the floor, it's not going to be so happy. So how would I do this today if I had to deal with that? I would get one of those steam cleaners that they, what they use to peel off wallpaper and so on and so forth. And I go over with that steam cleaner, and that would be the way to kosher it. And then I wipe it with a cold, wet cloth to remove whatever has come out when the steam cleaner went over it. The business of the, how we used to do the stove with a blowtorch, או שישים בהכלי ברזל מלובן, או אבני גחלת בוערות. So you have the big vessel filled with hot water, and then you put a hot poker, in, or you put in stones that have been heated to that heat. Hayore shemagilim baratzriche hagala, the very big vessel in which you do the kashering needs to also be kashered. Ki shema palta letocha ha'isur, because what came out of one may have gone into that one. Achar ha'hagala madichin akli b'mayim tzonenim, then you Ausgeschwenkt, what's the word that I would...
Rinse.
Huh?
Rinse?
You rinse, right. Thank you. Sometimes the words don't want to come with cold water. Ein mevochin al hagala, rak al atvila. For the kashering you don't make a broche, but when you dip the kelim that need go in a mikveh, you make a broche al tvilat kelim. Ad kan. So before we go into the issue of chometz and so on and so forth, I want to talk about the issue of the chemical, okay? As he began this thing to say that hasarat shamnunit, to remove the fat, the grease. Now, there is an element in which, since we learned that the whole reason is that there's a tam, hanivla, that there's a taste that gets into the walls of the vessel. So the question for us is it only fat that goes in? And the answer is no. We have observed that, for instance, a keli that's been used for a particular kind of thing. Imagine you have done pickles. And after, even if you have washed out the pickle jar, very good. And then if you were to cook water for tea in there, you would still get that. So the question is, leaching out the taste. That's where the thing remains for us. And this is why I keep coming down to the issue of chemical kashering, which was not in the purview of the people who were there before. Now, one of the things that we know, if I would want to go and kosher, let's say I used for pickling vinegar that was made from grain. Since it's made from grain, it's chametz, and the vinegar was chametz, and I want to do this pickle jar and make it kosher lePesach. What should I do? The answer would be, I would take baking soda and put that in, because I would like to have the base of the sodium get hold of the acid that was in there. Are you following me? That's how it would neutralize it. Okay? If, on the other hand, it would have a base element in there, I'd want to put in something of an acid thing.
This is sort of a litmus test.
Huh?
It's a litmus test.
Yeah. So, but you see, the litmus test would tell me what there was before if I don't know. But if I do know that this had vinegar inside, then if I use just that cleaning soda, and by the way, the washing soda that's being, if you look at non-polluting, if I don't want phosphates in there and so on and so forth, what do I use in, if I go to an ecological dishwashing thing, it will be mostly that soda. Now, when I was in school, I was so in love, I had a crush on Herr Levy, who was our chemistry and physics teacher. And
unusual.
I would read up ahead. At one point I wanted to be a chemist. And I would read up ahead on everything else, and could I do this experiment? Could I do this experiment? So once I did the experiment to show that fat and oil is a salt. And it's a salt because it has the base of the glycerides and glycerins, and it has stearic acid, which is, and how would I prove that? Okay. So I took the fat and I put in the acid, sulfuric acid, and what swam on top of that was the glycerides. And I was able to show that the litmus paper showed acid below and showed blue on top, that this was glyceride. Then I did the other side, I put in the base stuff, and I was able to show that that what was swimming on top was stearic acid. Okay, now when you see, I'm bringing this to bear on this issue here, that fats are acid, are salts, and we can use these things to get rid of them, to dissolve them enough, because glycerides wash away with water, fat does not. And so the point of so many of the detergents is to make it possible for the globules of fat to become emulsified, and right. So this is why I'm saying that chemical kashering has something to it, and that if we can use environment-friendly substances, to do that, it still would be able to fulfill the issues. I'm going to stop right now and deal with stuff that comes up, and then we're going to go on to the next part.
The things that have handles.
Pardon?
The things that have handles. The plastic, the bones,
Handles,
what are
yes.
the handles? Those are things that can't be, I was always taught, those are things that can't be kosher, you put them in the garage, or whatever.
Yeah.
Still so? Or do we have an answer
The
to
issue
that?
with handles is very interesting, because if you can kosher everything else but the handle, you can use tape and like use duct tape or something of that sort, electrical tape, and cover it, because the whole point is we want to make sure that nothing will touch it. Okay.
So it's that simple.
That'll look. I'm at this point. We live in a good society, okay, and in our society, it is possible. We are not that poor that we can't have different sets, and most of us have different sets for Pesach and so on. But at times, it comes out that people are machmir in such a way that it doesn't make any sense, and that's the reason why I'm producing this material for us, so that we could see what's the real stuff, rather than having to go into archaic ways of handling things that no longer.
Well, I think that's the important thing for us to discover. What was the ikar? What was the reason for? What's this thing?
Right.
So if it's a matter of touching, that my hand touches the handle that's touched something, and then I'll touch the food.
Yeah.
Then again, what you say, covering it with tape or whatever.
Look what people used to do that with surfaces too. We would put aluminum foil or
Right,
so forth
right.
to cover the surfaces with it. So the whole point
So that
is
too could work.
Huh?
I'm just trying to think of something easy, and aluminum foil is better than duct tape because cleaning the duct tape off afterwards.
Yeah, but on the other hand, you really have to tighten
Yeah.
the thing so it doesn't come off in mitten yontif. Okay, that's really what we're worried about. Anything else?
What about tools that
What's
are not
this?
kitchen tools?
Ash.
Oh,
Ah.
good. You and I will do that later. Okay.
What
Yes.
about any other tool in the house? Everything else that we use, pens, tools to fix the house. I mean, everything that
No,
we touch.
these things, if it has nothing to do with food, we don't have. We
It's
have a
only
bottle. That's what we are saying. Kol chamira v'chamia the chamite, the lo chamite, the biarte, the lo biarte, bottle levike afre the ara, I'm making it bottle, I'm making it hefker, and so on and so forth. So, because it says, kol chometz, etc., lo bal yeroe, bal yemotze. It mustn't be found in your house, it must not be seen, if it belongs to you. But when I sell it to a goy and I have it in the closet, for instance, then it doesn't belong to me. And if it doesn't belong to me, I'm not over on it. I used to be careful, for instance, after Pesach, there was a Jewish bakery in Fall River that kept baking during Pesach. They had to sell to the non-Jews and so on and so forth. There was a good bakery, but until Shavuos I didn't eat from their bakery afterwards, because chametz she'avar alav haPesach is asur behana'ah. So I would go to a Portuguese guy who would bake challahs for me from the white Portuguese bread, but I wouldn't eat until Shavuos. I wouldn't eat from there. The question of where we are, just a second, today when we have when Jews own shares in King Super, in the other big stores, is a real question, therefore, about what to do with the stuff after Pesach, okay? You want to say something?
I question the legitimacy of selling chametz to a guy, because the intent is to buy it back.
Well, I tell you something. The same way you could say you could have a real Taina on Hillel. Why did he say that you can do a prosbol so you don't lose your money when you lend to someone beforehand? So there's a cloud that's called Chas HaKadosh Baruch Hu Al Mamonim Shel Yisrael. That God is careful when it comes to Jewish property. He doesn't want us to have to waste it. And there are so many stories about people. For instance, there was a guy who had a distillery, and the priest warned all the people there that they shouldn't buy the chametz from the Jew, knowing that this would cause him great damage. So he went around, it was Erev Pesach, and he couldn't find a guy to sell. So he went around into the Goyishe section and said, I want you to know that my distillery and the vats that are all there are free, that I give up ownership on them. And the story was that he came back after Pesach and he found them all intact. So he asked later on what had happened. He said that some wild dogs came and guarded the property for him, and naselo nes, that he didn't lose it. I'm just giving it to you so that there is that concern. That concern shows itself also in leniency. When before Shabbos, a poor woman comes with a chicken that has a shaila, and you can find the possibility of a minority opinion to kosher it, you do it. So we do whatever we can, because we don't want to cause people a chesaron kis. Now, the use of this kind of a thing can get to be ridiculous, like in that story. The story is, there was a meeting in Jerusalem of all the branches of Judaism about smoking cigarettes. Right?
I love it.
The Reform rabbi said, we have voted against that because it is harmful to health. Okay. The conservative rabbi said, we have said that we leave each individual congregation to decide these kinds of things, but the halacha committee strongly recommends that they should forbid it. Okay. The Orthodox rabbi comes, of course, asur, you mustn't do it. However, if you sell your lungs to a goy, okay, so that's the joke that shows the stupidity of that. But you sometimes need a matla, a way to get around the law without breaking it. So you're not a scofflaw. And you see that every legal institution creates a way so you don't be a scofflaw and you can still manage what you need to manage.
But there are limits.
But Reb Zalman, that
Yeah.
chametz we sold to the goy,
Yeah.
and we bought back.
Yeah,
זה חמץ שעבר עליו פסח.
yeah, but it's not our chametz.
But
at
it
that
wasn't
time.
ברשותי.
Yeah, that's right.
See, the chametz thing I understand.
It's also like this.
It's like
That's exactly the point.
but it's like selling. It's somewhere between options and futures on the stock exchange. You're selling to the person that object. Delivery to happen on such and such a date, unless he sells it back to you.
That's right.
And that's
There have
futures
been
trading.
there have been some cases also where the priests and other people said, "Don't sell it back to them," and then they went and the rabbis helped them collect
Mhm.
all the kalim and everything else. So that's not a joke. I had this guy Herbie Ajoué. He was a Syrian goy, and he owned a laundrette on the corner, and I found out what kind of a schnapps he liked. Irish. Not Irish, Scotch. And I had a closet in which I put all the things, and I had a lock on it, and he had the key to the lock. And I didn't have it for Pesach. And for $1,005,000, he bought it from me, and he gave me $5 basic money. I bought it back for $1,010,000 afterwards, but I made the night that during Pesach he would come open the closet and take himself a drink. I had a glass in there so that he should be able to go into what belongs to him. At the end of Pesach, he had the bottle also. Now, that was my way of trying to make sure, saying that I really mean it, okay?
We did it with a room. We
Yeah.
had a guest room. And
Yeah.
that's where everything went.
Yeah,
And one year we, usually I would do it with somebody like the mayor or something down, but
yeah,
this time we didn't get to, so the guy across the street
yeah,
brought it. And one day during Pesach, his wife came over to borrow some flour or something that was in that room.
yeah,
And I said, "This is great.
right,
You don't borrowing it, it's yours. Go and get it. Take it." So
right.
she went and got it, took it out to her house. Well, she came to our house with it, but it was still a very cool thing.
That's
that you
that's
did.
the point. All right, we gotta do the other stuff now. So follow me onto the next shikole.
I have one more question.
Yes.
Why moving it from one year to another is not kosher? What was kosher this year is not kosher next year for Pesach.
I don't understand.
You
If
know,
you have matzah from this year,
yeah,
and
matzah
use
from
it for
this year
next
won't
year's
be.
Passover.
Why?
It's not
it's
so.
kosher.
It's not so. It isn't so. We just want to make sure that they don't sell you old matzah. That's all. Stale matzah.
It's not halacha
No, it's not halacha.
because it says on the box lo kasher lePesach. It's just a way of them making money, I guess. Huh?
No. They are baking also matzah without the hashgacha during the year. Manisheves is,
This I
for instance,
understand.
then when they do the tam-tams and they do all those things that are not quite Pesachig, then it says that's not kosher.
Yeah, but if it was kosher last Pesach and it is left over, it's still kosher this Pesach?
Absolutely.
Well,
long as
then
it's
you bring
closed.
something else
As
up.
long as it's closed.
See,
Yeah, you wouldn't
Seal.
have an open.
The matzah that is not kosher for the Seder, but is kosher for Pesach.
Yeah,
Yes?
There is
because
such a
it wasn't baked l'shem matzah's mitzvah.
Okay. So that stuff we can eat it during Pesach. We just can't use it for the Seder.
That's right.
That's the chocolate matzah and the whatever.
That's you can't be yotze achilas matzah with that because, or for instance, what's called matzah ashira, egg matzah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's
Right.
done with fruit juice and with eggs, and you can make a mezonos on it and not.
So when it says not kosher for Pesach, does that mean for the Seder or for?
No, that means for
Pesach
that's
altogether.
not all of Pesach. That's made from chametz. I remember Striped Matzah. I used to go there on Rivington Street and watch the matzah bakery. Did you ever see? I don't know if you saw it then. Out came sheets of 9 matzahs, and then the machine would break them and pack them. And it was interesting. They did it so that you could watch it in the window, how the matzahs came out and in one piece, 9, and they had the perforation so it would break easily there and not on the other side. And for matzah meal, for instance, they would underbake it a little bit so that the matzah meal should be more, I don't know, you haven't seen dark matzah meal, you know, but if you take regular matzahs and you grind it, it's much darker than the matzah meal. It's a little underbaked. Okay. Let's go take a look to the next part over here. Shiur chametz, I'm going to drop that at this point. If we have time, we'll go back to that. Mine kitnis v'chametz nuksha. Din chametz eino ela mechameshet mine dagan. 5 kinds of grain. Chitim, wheat. Seorim, barley. Kusmin is rye. Shibolet shual is oat. And shipun, and now we come to that, to the small ones. What do you call it? Spelt.
Shipon is spelled, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the one that you were talking about, cut, what did you call it?
Teft.
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 T-E-F-T.
It
Little
all-
tiny brown grains.
Yeah, but they are also, so here's the story. The big question came up since in the time of the Mishnah, they didn't have potatoes. They came from America, from South America. And they didn't have maize that came from America.
Or peanut.
And maize is a grass, but it's not the same kind. If I were to go to the genus of it, I don't know if you go around sometimes in the summer, you can see that some grass is oat grass, some grass is wheat. And I'm not talking the wheat grass that we eat, but is grass that shows wheat, and some of those show like rye, and you can see the way in which the kernels, the seeds are there. And I take it that in agriculture they managed to get larger and larger, year after year until they got grain that is, if you walk through a rye field when it's ripe, it's almost red, the rye. And it's very nice to see a golden wheat field. And oat is more on the grayish side, and so on. So you see, these are the ones from which that make chametz. If you've ever seen the sprouts from buckwheat, you realize it has little leaves. It doesn't have, it doesn't have.
It's not really a grain.
It's not a grain.
It's kind of a
It's not the
fruit.
same. It's not that we use it as a grain, but it's not a grain. Quinoa, the same way. So the question has always come up: what happens to people who cannot eat wheat, for instance? And can you have spelt matzahs? And there are some places that make spelt matzahs.
The deli in Denver has it this year.
Because the need for people, to be yotze at the same time, not to get hurt eating that which their body doesn't stand for. Interesting enough is also that in most matzah, the gluten doesn't come out strong because you need a lot of more kneading to get gluten. Have you ever made your own seitan?
No. It's like soy.
Oh.
It's not soy. It's made from wheat.
Seitan is from wheat.
It's gluten. You take high gluten wheat.
It looks like soy chunks.
That's right.
But it's wheat.
And you knead it and you let it stand for a while and the gluten comes out. And then you take that and you wash it in water. And the starch goes away and the gluten remains. And that is that's protein. That's the wheat protein. And you can buy it in stores, seitan. And when you go to a Chinese restaurant and they give you fake chicken or fake this or fake that, usually it's made from these or from the other. Okay. Din chametz eino nachameshes mine dagon chitim seorim kusvim shebolet shual b'shipun vehem haminim shiyotzim behem yedei chovat matzah. Okay? You fulfill the matzah obligation with them, and if they get fermented, that's chametz. La'afuke, to exclude ores v'dochen v'chol mine kitnius she'en bahem chimutz. Ores and dochen is, what do you call it? Is rice. I forgot what dochen is.
Millet.
Millet, right. Thank you. Aval harabanim gazru shelo le'echol mine kitnius b'Pesach. Which rabbanim?
Ashkenazi.
Right. Lefi she'osin mehem kemach. Ve'ati lemichla bekemach shel minei dagan. And so in order to make sure that you will not... But take a look how interesting this is. The whole reason was because you make flour from them. So you can have bean flour, you can have pea flour, you can have flour from all these things. But when you can see the beans themselves and the peas themselves and not the flour, do I have to worry about that? It isn't forbidden by itself, it is forbidden by extension, okay? And the extension is when it is turned into flour.
But why? Because you can use the grains from wheat and all these other from matzah. Why couldn't you have kidneys flour?
You could have kidneys flour, but you wouldn't fulfill the mitzvah of matzah.
But you could still eat it on Pesach.
Well,
That's what
depends,
they're saying, yeah.
according to them, no, and according to where I go with this, yes.
Okay. I don't understand their no.
Well, it's very simple because they're saying that they don't want you to use any peas, beans, legumes whatsoever. Period.
But why?
Because by extension, since you can use them to make flour, and the flour can be confused with flour that comes from wheat, therefore that's a no-no.
But it's only a no-no for the matzah for the Seder.
No, it's also a no-no for the rest of Pesach, because if it could be matzah for the Seder, if it becomes chametz, chametz by contamination. Look, have you never had hummus that turned sour, that fermented? Fermentation is a thing that goes all the way. It's so strange because the Torah, we never got a sense from the Torah that yeast is forbidden. Because otherwise you wouldn't have wine for Pesach either, you know? It is only the yeast working, and you can have buttermilk, which also has yeast, and cheeses that have yeast. And the only thing that's forbidden is the work of yeast on those 5 kinds of grain. That makes it chametz.
So soy would be okay?
So I would be okay, but I want to say more than that, you know? Do you remember leavening?
Mm-hmm.
So some people have gone and said that baking soda and baking powder are forbidden because you mustn't eat anything leavened. A mistake.
Mm-hmm.
What it does is the same thing that yeast does. It gives off carbon dioxide and it makes those bubbles. But that does it chemically and not through the process, not biologically, okay? Yeast does it biologically, and baking soda and baking powder doesn't. So, but there are some people who, by extension, it sounds like if you're going to permit that kind of leavening, they'll want the other kind of leavening, and therefore that's forbidden, okay?
But you say yeast is allowed?
No.
No,
Baking soda is allowed.
Baking soda. But yeast is in the wine and in the cheese.
that's what I just said.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why is it allowed one place down the
Yeah.
other?
Yeast
allowed with
working
grain.
on the 5 kinds of grain is forbidden.
That's it. Only on the 5 kinds of grain.
If it's on every other thing,
Which is why
you
Scotch
can't
is not
keep it
allowed,
out.
and wine is.
Could you imagine what we would have to do if we would have to clear the air of every kind of spore of yeast that floats around? Why is it that if you leave food out that it turns sour? Because from the air yeast starts coming in.
So what then makes wine kosher lepesach?
I don't get it. What's the question?
Well, there's wine that's not kosher lepesach. There's wine that's kosher lepesach.
Because it's been watched simply that they didn't put in other, for instance, sulfites and stuff like that.
But there are sulfites in kosher lepesach.
Then
wine.
they got kosher lepesach sulfites. The people who they got a hechsher on the sulfites.
It's never ending.
So it's just a matter of getting a hechsher on, not that there's anything different.
Well, the problem with wine is anyway difficult
okay.
because it's stam yenam, and we aren't supposed to drink wine without a hechsher because a goy may have eyed it with an intention to use it for communion.
Avodah zarah, yeah.
In this day and age.
Huh?
In this day and age.
Well, I tell you something. Some of us care about this, some of us don't. But the issue that the Gemara brings us is mishum chitun. If you drink with the goyim, you're gonna marry the goyim, and intermarriage today is happening. If so, we shouldn't be smoking with them either, you know, and taking ecstasy, which is even worse, you know. You know, and Viagra should be forbidden lest you will take it before you meet a goyim. Okay.
But the intermarriage was the thing against intermarriage was you might go and worship with them if you marry them.
Well, that's it'll lead to dancing. Remember that story. Why don't the Mennonites make love standing up? It'll lead to dancing. All right. Aval, continue. Taruvatan ena oseret ki im beruva. When they are mixed into something, we're talking about the kidneys. they're not forbidden unless they become the majority of the food. So that if you were to mix in according to this here, you make Pesachike potato latkes. And a quarter of the stuff of potato latkes is going to be risotto that you have made, and you fry it up. That would be okay because it isn't the whole. It's not more than it's not the majority. I think the issue about where we go with kidneys today is much clearer than it was in the past. V'yesh min chametz min dagan shenikra chametz nuksha. There is a kind of chametz that's called the hardened chametz, and that could be v'yesh bazeh shnei pirushim u'shneim emet. There are two ways to interpret that, and both of these interpretations are true. How so? Aleph, chametz ra she'eino roi la'achila. It is a chametz that you cannot, that's not worth of eating. They're talking about achilat kelef, that even a dog won't have it. And that's what got us into the question of pet food on Yontif, on Pesach. And what to do about pet food. So I'm going to feed the cats.
Sell it to the cat.
Huh?
Sell the food to the cat.
The cat is not capable of owning, but the goy is capable of owning. But that's not the issue. Here the issue is it's asur b'hana'ah. It is forbidden to make any use of that. So if it's asur b'hana'ah, the question is which cat food should I give? Now the nice thing is that they are carnivores. So if I give him tuna and I give him turkey and salmon and chicken and stuff like that, I don't have a daige. The question is going to be about the dry cat food, and I will have to look at the ingredients of that. Often they do have some
They do have wheat.
wheat inside, and then I will, for that week, I will not feed them that. Okay. So chametz ra she'eino ra'oi la'achila. Bet, the second one is chamitzo eino chametz gamur v'hu tov lemachal. As Rashi says, al mei perot en machmitzin she'achimus hu nuksha u'machal be'atzmo tov al chametz nuksha eino chayev kores ela over belav. What is the other side of chametz nuksha? Remember what kvass was?
What?
Kvass.
Something like yogurt?
Kvass was a drink that before we had soda water, they would have a barrel and they would take old bread
It's a
and drop
greenish
it
sort
in.
of thing?
Huh?
They look kind of greenish.
I don't know. No, it's not. No. You're talking about borscht and
Shav.
Shav.
not
Shav.
shab.
Okay.
Kvass was simply bubbling up, stuff, and they would put in some sugar into that, and so it start ferment. When it's well fermented, by that time it wasn't drinkable. The nicest time it was drinkable was, do you remember most?
Mm-hmm.
When the grape juice bubbles and it hasn't turned to wine yet. That's what Paparelli, what it is called. When you get that grape juice that has the bubbles inside,
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was meant, we get it with carbon monoxide inside. That's pushed by gas, yeah. But the original way it was, you left it stand and it would start bubbling up. When I first got started in New Haven, I wanted to make wine for Kiddush that I could really rely on. So I cooked up raisins, and I put the raisins into a bottle, and I didn't leave it open, the bottle. So then it came Erev Shabbos, and I was going to go and decant that bottle, and it all landed up on the ceiling. you know. And if the bottle would have been of thinner material, it would have busted, it would have exploded. So that's how they used to make kvass. And he's pointing out that mei perot ein machmitzin she'achimutz hu nukshet u'machal be'atzmo tov. It was good to have it, but it is not a finished fermentation. That's called chometz nuksha. So you have two possibilities of saying. One is, for instance, if you take, give you an example. I took flour and water and made a dough, and I used it, put a little sand inside, and I used it for sculpting, right? And I have it in the house. Is this, where do I stand with this? Is this chometz? Do I have to throw it out?
No, it's not for food.
That's what he's saying here, you know. Chometz ra she'eino roi la'achila, okay? But hardtack, for instance, is baked almost the same way. You know, do you remember the army rations, K rations?
Sure, hardtack.
Huh?
Even before that, hardtack was a staple.
Yeah, so that wouldn't spoil, and you would always put it into hot water or something like this, and it would swell up, and then you'd have something that you could eat. Now that is dry. It would be chometz nuksha. You know, when you wet it, that's why some people are afraid of brocken, and they don't allow for gebrocht, so they don't eat until the last day of Pesach, Achen Shel Pesach. They don't use matzah balls or anything that's baked with matzah meal, lest there would be some bit of flour inside the matzah that wasn't baked. So I once asked this question way back when I was in the yeshiva, how to deal with that. And I was told that the problem of gebrochts is more in hand-baked shmure than in machine matzah. Because machine matzah has been, kneaded very, very well, and it has been baked at a temperature and so on and so forth that makes it more likely that it was baked. The strange thing is that you could take matzah meal and let it stand and also get sour. But you say that after baking, whatever happened after baking halachically is not called chometz. And I remember, for instance, when we make those rolls from matzah meal, and they're very nice to eat and so on. And some people wouldn't touch that because it's too close to chometzic things. There is an element about where do you want to go, and that's a very important one. If you're going to have everything that you can have chometzik, and you're going to have it in Pesach because you can get it with a hechsher, there are some opinions, I'm talking about personal feeling opinions. They say, that's not Pesachic, That way you could even bake a certain kind of bread and look at the Pesachic cakes that you get. From people will not have, for instance, macarons that will have matzah meal inside. They'll bake it from anything else but from matzah meal. Because once you go into matzah meal, you always have that kind of a question about how to deal with it. I don't know, sometimes it looks to me that if I were to have live with a resident community, a intentional community, I would like to have Pesach done altogether different than I'm doing it now. For instance, I do believe that's an interesting thing to slaughter a lamb. And even if it isn't a lamb, because I would have to worry about kodeshim bechutz, but to slaughter a deer, for instance, and to eat of that, and you roast it on a spit, or you put it on coals inside and you bury it for 24 hours until it bakes out on the charcoal that's in there, and that you go foraging for tzimgesen, for the karpas, and and for the moror, so you would find dandelion greens from moror, because they're the best moror that they can be, and you would find wild onions and things for karpas. This way, stalking the wild asparagus in this way, I would like to see that happen. I would like us to make a week of this kind of almost survival food with what's available at that time, and not reach out necessarily for ways in which I can have what I have all year round. That's on one side. On the other side, when I start thinking about people who are having problems in health and so on and so forth, I want to go to the greatest amount of leniency. Sometimes people think about machmir and what's machmir and what is mekel. So Reb Chaim Brisker, one day a man comes to him to ask a shaila, Rebbe, can I be yoitze arba kosher, the 4 cups with milk? And he looks at him and gives him 20 rubles and says no. The Rebbetzin comes out and says, listen, I know the din, you can be yoitze with milk. Why did you say no? He says, what's he gonna eat? No fleischiks in his house if he's gonna have milk. So it shows me that he's very poor, so he needs to have money to make a decent Pesach. So I said no to him. Okay. But what would be if someone like the Nazir, he was a disciple of Rav Kook, and he had sworn off wine. So he asked the Shaila, how could he be Yotze Arba Kosher? And he was told to drink 4 cups of undiluted apple juice. The concentrated apple juice, and that's what he was making his Arba Kosher.
Why not grape juice?
Because not supposed to.
Because grape is forbidden. Charzanim zag, anything that hayotze min.
But we always
Like
give
Geffen.
grape juice to the children.
Huh?
We always
no, but
give
not
grape
for
juice.
Nazir.
Nazir. Okay.
Right? Okay.
Oh, anything that
He
comes
was
from
my,
it.
Yeah.
my best friend's father-in-law was this Nazir in Yerushalayim.
Uh-huh. Well, he was a wonderful person.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop now.